Breaking news. Big moves are shaking up the NFL, and Chargers fans, you're going to want to hear this. Just hours ago, one of the top names on my radar was taken off the market, and it could have major implications for Los Angeles. The question now, who's left, and which players should the Chargers target next? Stick with me because we're breaking it all down, and trust me, you'll want to hear every name on this list. What's up, Bolt fam? Today, we're diving into some surprising roster shakeups that could directly impact the Chargers. Hours ago, my number one target was signed by the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, you heard that right. The Browns swooped in and grabbed Cole Strange. And as if that wasn't enough, they also picked up Rocket Sanders. Talk about frustrating. Those moves might come back to haunt us. But don't worry, I've got a full list of 8 waived players who are still available and worth the Chargers' attention. These guys could provide depth, strengthen the practice squad, and maybe even crack the 53-man roster down the road. But before we get into the names, quick reminder, if you love staying updated with the latest Chargers news, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and don't forget to ring the bell icon. That way you'll never miss breaking updates like this. Now, let's move on to the new news. All right, let's kick things off with number 8 on my list. This one's more of a wild card, but sometimes risks lead to the biggest rewards. I'm talking about Desmond Watson, the massive defensive tackle recently cut by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This guy is nearly 430 pounds, one of the biggest players you'll ever see step onto an NFL field. Now, I get it, that's not exactly a plug-and-play fit, but here's the thing. Watson has shown passion for the game and an incredible drive to succeed. During Bucs training camp, he was working hard to shed weight and reshape his body just to get practice reps. That kind of determination stands out, and with the right coaching, he could turn into a powerful piece on the defensive line. Desmond Watson is a name that sticks with you, and not just because of his size. The man has been grinding to slim down, determined to prove he belongs in this league. That kind of hunger is something you can't coach. Sure, he's a long shot, but for a practice squad role, or even a developmental backup nose tackle, he's the kind of story that makes football fun. And honestly, watching a 430-pound lineman swallow up a quarterback while still flashing a smile, that's the kind of raw, passionate energy every team wants in its locker room. But let's keep moving, because the next name might actually fill a real position of need for the Chargers. Carter Warren, offensive tackle from the Jets. Not long ago, there were whispers of trade rumors around him, and now he's out there for the taking. A 4th-round pick in 2023, standing 6'5" and weighing in at 325 pounds. Warren is exactly the type of big-bodied lineman you want clearing lanes for a running back. Now, let's be real, his run blocking still needs polish. Scouts have pointed that out since his rookie year, but as a pass protector, he holds his own. And with the Chargers' O-line depth always being tested, having a player like Warren available as a swing tackle, or even someone you can slide inside if needed, feels like an opportunity worth exploring. Especially after bringing in Austin Deculus, you'd think the team might be set. But if anything, that trade just highlighted how important it is to have multiple options. Depth wins games, and Warren could quietly become one of those depth pieces that matter in December. And now for a bit of a curveball. This one is more of a fun factor pick than a surefire roster move. Shiloh Sanders. Yes, part of the famous Sanders family. And yes, the name alone will raise eyebrows. But strip away the headlines and the hype, and what you've got is a competitor with genuine upside. Coming out of college, there were plenty who thought Shiloh might sneak into the draft, even if it was late. He's got the pedigree, but more importantly, he's got the tools. The speed, the instincts, and the fire. The question is whether he can carve out his own identity at the professional level. Sometimes a player just needs the right system, the right coaching, and the right opportunity, and Los Angeles has been known to take chances on stories like this. When you look past the headlines, Shiloh Sanders brings more to the table than just a famous last name. He went undrafted, landed with Tampa Bay, and gave it everything he had before being released. What stands out most about his game is the physicality. He's a hard-hitting safety, the kind of player who thrives in the box, reads plays quickly, and isn't afraid to lower the shoulder. That kind of toughness fits the mold of a Jesse Minter-style defense. Now, is he a long shot? Sure, but the Chargers have already shown they're not afraid to take chances on legacy players, and sometimes those bets pay off. For all the noise surrounding the Sanders family, if you focus on the football side of things, Shiloh has traits that deserve at least a second look. Moving on, here's a name I can't believe slipped through the draft. Jake Majors, center out of Texas. Going into draft season, many projected him as a solid mid-round pick. Chargers fans, myself included, had him penciled into mock drafts more than once. And yet, somehow, he went undrafted. Eventually, he signed with Tampa Bay. But like others on this list, he's now available. Majors isn't perfect. Scouts pointed out that his arm length might be an issue at the pro level. But when you watch his tape at Texas, the positives jump off the screen. He was a steady run blocker, but where he truly excelled was in pass protection. For a Chargers team still searching for answers along the offensive line, that's exactly the type of skill set worth gambling on. With Cole Strange now off the board after being scooped up by Cleveland, the urgency at center feels even greater. Majors might not be a guaranteed starter, but he's smart, technically sound, and young enough to develop. Sometimes you don't need a perfect option, you just need a good one. And right now, the Chargers cannot afford to overlook any opportunity to strengthen the middle of that line. Cole Strange would have been a dream pickup, no doubt about it. And while that door is closed, names like Jake Majors still feel like realistic options the Chargers should have on the table, especially with his intelligence and pass protection skills. But let's pivot, because the next player is one that fans have been buzzing about since Justin Herbert's draft class. I'm talking about Isaiah Simmons. Funny how football works. Back then it was either Herbert or Simmons, and history shows the Chargers made the right call. Herbert turned into the franchise cornerstone. Simmons? Well, his career hasn't exactly lived up to that first-round billing. He's flashed talent, but hasn't put it all together consistently. Still, with the Chargers' situation at linebacker, this could be worth exploring. Losing Junior Colson for the season is a gut punch. He was a perfect fit in this defense. And now that opportunity is gone. Yes, the team added Delshon Phillips, and Marlowe Wax stepped up in a big way. But depth is still thin. That's where Simmons could slide in. Look, the numbers don't lie. In his career, Simmons has posted 8.5 sacks, 9 forced fumbles, and 5 interceptions. Those are impact plays. The talent is in there somewhere. It just hasn't fully surfaced. And here's the interesting part. The Chargers have built a reputation for breathing new life into players once labeled busts. Trey Lance is the most recent example, a former top pick who many gave up on, now one of the most reliable backups in the league. That's why Simmons intrigues me. He's the kind of versatile athlete who can line up at linebacker, drop into coverage, and create chaos when he's locked in. If any coaching staff can tap into his upside, it might be this one. Bringing him in, even on a practice squad deal, feels like a low-risk, high-reward move. Imagine Herbert leading the offense while Simmons, the player once debated alongside him, finds redemption in the same jersey. That's a storyline worth watching. Now picture this for a second, Isaiah Simmons lining up next to Derwin James, a hybrid safety linebacker with that kind of athleticism, paired with one of the best defensive leaders in the league, under a coordinator like Jesse Minter, who knows how to unlock unique skill sets. That's a vision that actually makes sense. Simmons may not be a guaranteed star anymore, but in the right system, he could still be dangerous. But let's shift gears to the offensive side of the ball, because the next name is a surprising one. Greg Dulce, former Broncos tight end, most recently with the Giants. This is a player who, not too long ago, looked like he was going to make a real mark in the league. Drafted in the 3rd round, he was known for his soft hands, smooth routes, and ability to get open as a pass-catching tight end. And when he was on the field, he showed it. In fact, this preseason he was one of the most productive tight ends in the league, finding the end zone multiple times. So why is he available? One word: health. Injuries have followed him from Denver to New York, and that stalled what could have been a much stronger career up to this point. When you're sidelined that often, opportunities dry up fast. But here's the thing, the Chargers have never been afraid to take a chance on players who need a second shot. They did it with J.K. Dobbins, who many wrote off after his injuries, only for him to bounce back and prove he still had gas in the tank. Dolce could be another example of that philosophy. Right now, Los Angeles has 4 tight ends on the roster, including Tucker Fisk, which was already an interesting move. Dolce wouldn't need to step in as a starter. He'd simply provide depth, insurance, and another pass-catching option in case injuries hit later in the year, or a practice squad role, or a developmental spot. That's the kind of upside you don't ignore. A healthy Greg Dolce is a weapon, and if the Chargers believe they can get him there, even part-time, it could turn into one of those sneaky signings that makes a difference when it matters most. Greg Dolce on the practice squad isn't the worst idea. If he can stay healthy, you might actually uncover real value there. But moving up the list, number 2 is a fascinating case. One that feels like a gamble with high risk, but undeniable upside. I'm talking about Kenyon Green, a former first-round pick who, not too long ago, looked like he was about to anchor the Texans' offensive line for years. Coming out of college, he checked every box: raw power, the ability to maul defenders in the run game, and the technique to hold his own in pass protection. On paper, he looked like the kind of player you build around. But then came reality. His rookie season, a complete disaster. Nothing translated the way people expected. And before he could bounce back, a shoulder injury in the preseason wiped out his second year entirely. By then, Houston seemed ready to wash their hands of the whole experiment. He briefly landed with the Eagles, but injuries followed him again, and before long, he was back on the market. Now, here's why this is still intriguing. The talent never disappeared. Green's tape before the NFL draft showed flashes of dominance, and players with that level of raw ability don't just vanish. Sometimes, it's about the right system, the right coaching, and the right second chance. And if there's any team that loves rolling the dice on former first-rounders, it's the Chargers. Let's be real, offensive line depth in Los Angeles remains a concern. They've added pieces here and there, but protecting Justin Herbert has to be priority number 1. So why not take a flyer? If Kenyon Green can even partially rediscover what made him such a coveted prospect, you could have a steal of a backup guard waiting in the wings. Yes, the red flags are obvious: injuries, inconsistency, stalled development, but the upside still there. And that's exactly why he lands this high on the list. And finally, the number 1 player. The more I thought about this one, the more it made sense. The Charger situation has shifted fast, and this name could matter more than anyone expected: Eric Estee. On paper, the Chargers' running back room looks stacked. Najee Harris is back at practice and moving well, and Marion Hampton brings the same workhorse energy he's carried throughout his career. Together, that duo feels like the foundation of a ground game you can trust. But here's the thing about running backs: durability is everything. These are players who live in the trenches, taking hits every single snap. And while the Chargers are betting on 3 backs to carry the load, depth just got a little thinner. Rocket Sanders, the explosive undrafted rookie who turned heads all summer, was snatched up by the Browns. That stung, because Sanders looked like the perfect developmental piece. Then there's Kamani Vidal, thankfully back on the practice squad. Vidal isn't flashy, but he does all the little things right: solid pass protection, reliable hands, and the ability to grind out tough yards. Losing him would have hurt just as much. Still, it's hard not to feel that the room is one body short. Harris and Hampton should handle the majority of carries, no doubt. But what happens if one of them misses time? That's why another name keeps coming to mind: Audric Esteen. The former Notre Dame standout is the definition of a power back. He may not be the fastest guy on the field, but once he lowers his shoulder, defenders feel it. Esteen thrives in those early down, short yardage situations where you need brute strength more than finesse. That's the kind of back Jim Harbaugh has always valued: a hammer who can wear down defenses and set the tone physically. The frustrating part: Esteen didn't land in Los Angeles. Instead, the Broncos scooped him up. And that's exactly the kind of move that makes you think about what might have been, because a trio of Harris, Hampton, and Esteen would have given the Chargers a devastating mix of power, balance, and versatility. What's wild is that Audric Esteem actually feels like he belongs in Sean Payton's offense too. That's what makes his situation so strange. Denver drafted RJ Harvey out of UCF, a guy who absolutely torched defenses last season. And they also added J.K. Dobbins. With that kind of crowd in the room, Esteem was the odd man out. But here's the thing. Esteem is exactly the type of back who could thrive under Jim Harbaugh. He's not flashy, he's not built for highlight reels, but he's a hammer. Put him next to someone like Kamani Vidal, who's steady in pass protection and dangerous catching the ball, and suddenly you've got balance. Esteem gives you the muscle. Vidal gives you the versatility. Together, they make the run game that much harder to predict. And honestly, that's the kind of depth that wins games late in the season. You can have your stars, but when defenses are worn down in December, a punishing back like Esteem is the guy who breaks their will. If he's still floating around in free agency, that's the kind of low-key pickup that could turn out to be a steal. Right now, there are a handful of names on the market worth looking at, not just backs, but offensive linemen too. The roster churn this time of year is constant, and you never know which move will end up making the difference. The bottom line? The Chargers already have a strong backfield, but one more piece could be the difference between solid and special.